Now, this is about section 2, that is tragedy defined the principles of its construction. This section, all the parts talk mostly about tragedy in general, tragedy, the characteristic features, the other important aspects while writing a tragedy. That is, those are the main things and main major topics discussed by major ideas and a briefing given by Aristotle in this section. So part 6, that is section under we have different compartments, and part 6 of this section talks about the tragedy definition. We get the tragedy definition of tragedy and the constituent elements of tragedy in this part. And let me read the uh, exact definition given by Aristotle himself. Tragedy is an imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude in language embellished with each kind of artistic ornament, the several kinds being found in separate parts of the play, in the form of action, not of narrative, through pity and fear, affecting the propagation of these emotions. This is the definition we get from Aristotle. And the best way of analyzing this statement, this definition goes like taking each part, each word at times, it needs explanation to understand, to get the point given by Aristotle or what he means. To get that idea in a clear cut manner, we have to analyze each and every word of this definition. It's not because the words are tough, the meanings may be really uh, already known to us, but in the context of this definition and with in connection with Aristotle's idea of tragedy as a literary type, we have to analyze each and every word and get back to the definition. And now, first, we see the tragedy to be an imitation of an action. We know every kind of art, it is already told to be imitation, whichever art form it may be, that imitation takes place, the representation, that the tendency to represent something which is there readily available in reality, that is the major starting, beginning of the being of an art, or the one artistic form coming into being, that is with this tendency of our tendency to imitate something of an action. Now, as it is about tragedy, it is about the action, that is it. So it's not about, it's about moving characters, the lifelike characters are acted out, so imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude. Now, this is about a demand on the part of what kind of action it should be. It cannot enact every kind of human action, but the only those actions which are serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude. So, serious, the action should be really serious. You cannot take a very the actions which evoke laughter in the audience, but should be a very serious one. And we have to go back to the definition of epic and the connection epic and the tragedy hold together. Then we will understand the importance of this action to be serious. Of course, every epic used to treat a very serious and a very moral character. The main character, the whole story is revolving around the same character who is somewhat high of a higher kind, and this is about the seriousness, so that is retained in tragedy also as a main requirement. So that serious and complete action, that action should be completed by the end of the tragedy. We should not have a dilemma what happened there, how it ended in that way, it could have been in this way or that way, but it should be completely given by the writer, the tragic writer himself. So there is no open ended feature allowed in this tragedy. As we talk about some modern style writing, modern writings, we have a lot of possibilities to end the narrative or dramatic writing in any way we would like to, but during that time, and as a kind of, you can talk about a reference text, it's about how to write a tragedy. It is as we get a kind of uh, ideas from on one platform. Aristotle's Poetics the text goes in that, or it stands in that way, at least at that time. And magnitude, so of a certain magnitude, all this certain magnitude, again, that is about a complete whole. We should be able to comprehend that whole, because even if we talk, even though we can talk about a kind of certain length, preferable length and all, obviously it goes to some, or it runs to some 1 to 3 hours minimum. Not in 3 or 4 hours, it could be ended. During that time it prolonged to many hours, so that the audience should not lose connection between the events because of some kind of a shortcoming in its portrayal, or the characters and the selection of incidents should be of an artistic kind of magnitude, that is a comprehensive whole, that should be maintained, and in language embellished with each kind of artistic ornament. What do you mean by language embellished? Embellished language means some kind of an ornamental language. Obviously, we should not, or that Aristotle prefers a kind of ornamental language. It should not be daily life, day to day life conversation, as it is preferred by some romantic critics later. It is about very high and elevated kind of embellished language, with each kind of artistic ornament, the several kinds being found in separate parts of the play. And again, that is another thing. It should not be wholly embellished with from beginning to end. It should not be with a high language, high flourish, but it should be used as per the requirement, as per the situation demands. Otherwise, as the in tragedy also, we may have to portray some very lower characters as supporting role, in supporting roles and roles. So every time we cannot make the language to be heavy and ornamental, but that should be that usage should come in a very logical and reasonable manner as well. So that is about the talent of the writer who is making this, and in the form of action, not of narrative. That is main feature of this. As I go, it should be in the form of action, and it is mainly meant to be staged, not just for reading. So all elements that should contain, that should be there, that in a way at least instructing how this actor should act, how this character should be presented. At least in brief, that elements are given. Say, for example, in brackets, it is given to be aside. That means the character on the stage, one character is speaking, and the audience also gets the thought in the mind of the character. But what the next to the characters, the actors next to the characters next to this person is not supposed to be hearing that. So this is about the techniques, stage techniques. Also, that also get included in the kind of presentation of a tragedy. And through pity and fear, that is the major part of Aristotle's definition. These actions, once presented on stage, should evoke pity and fear in the audience, and effecting the proper purgation of these emotions. So, evoking pity and fear, and these that has a separate part allotted, that is discussed in a separate part itself, so that it should not be talked before taking into account each and every part, and how all these stay important in the evolve in the presentation of a tragedy. So how does this become possible, how it becomes possible, the pity and fear, and what is the relevance of that in purgating the emotions of the audience? That is to be discussed in detail as part of Aristotle's text itself, in the chapter that is allotted for that itself. Before that, we can talk about other important ideas that are incorporated in this part itself. That is, he talks about 6 parts of tragedy, this elementary parts of tragedy. Every tragedy is supposed to contain or carry these, is supposed to be comprised of these six elements. Let us see. Let me read that. That is plot, character, diction, thought, spectacle, song. First one is plot, second one is character, third one is diction, fourth is thought, fifth is spectacle, and the sixth one is song. So all these are the major elementary parts of a tragedy. And let us see what a plot is. Plot is just the arrangement of incidents. Not just with the tragedy we come across plots or we have plots, but many other literary types also take the uh, take this plot to be its major elementary uh, part or elementary feature. And plot is that, and character we know, in virtue of which we ascribe certain qualities to the agents. Character we mean, as we always use the term, it is about with the character we mean we understand, we recognize whether this is something virtuous, whether the character is good or bad and all. So this is about, just about character. And diction, we know diction is a term for word, and that is again diction is highly important, because this is again, even before acting, this is to be narrated, and we have to have the written format so that it can be represented on stage. And thought also gets revealed itself in speech, that is required whenever the statement is provided, or it may be a general truth enunciated. That is what Aristotle talks about. Thought that is required whenever the statement, that is the statement, and we have to analyze its value worth in an occasion. The general truths may be given in thought of a character, not always like a dialogues between two. Sometimes we see characters thinking and speaking thereon, and then their thoughts become revealed in front of the audience. So that is the importance of thought. At times it, even see during that time or in a tragedy, it plays much bigger role. It is thought. Sometimes it is about some conspiracies, so that the innocent or naive characters do not know that, but this plot against them is carried out. So that also all get revealed in the thought, and how it is represented on stage. The depth with which these thoughts are uh, communicated by the characters, that means a lot. And spectacle is just about the stage mechanism. Spectacle is mostly about the stage mechanism. And we know have song in addition. It is fine that it spectacle carries songs along with the presentation, but we see we cannot uh, add much and more songs and to make it as a stuff of that. It has to be used only when the occasion demands. So this is the way Aristotle's the parts of the tragedy, he as per his definition and as well as per his uh, giving the idea about the elementary parts. We can talk about all these six the components of a tragedy. And again, he tries to categorize each of these into three already defined features. And see, we can see medium of imitation, and these six are again categorized under certain titles, that is medium of diction and song. We have already, we know now what all these six features, these elements mean. And meet is the diction and song. Two out of that, that is diction and song, he categorizes or he puts it under the title medium of imitation. Those are the medium with which he imitates the action. With the words, he gives the characters, he gives the ideas of the character. We get the idea of the character, how the character gets represented. How do we know that this character is very good, the other character is villainous, he is a heroic feature, he is this character is with the heroic qualities. We know that from the diction, the words that they speak. So that is the medium of imitation that should be there, otherwise we cannot write that. And the second one is about the object of imitation. Plot, character, and thought are the objects of imitation. So the plot, it is an object of imitation. Character, the character is again imitated, and the thoughts of the character also come under the same category. So those are the objects of imitation. And the manner of imitation, we know it is spectacle, with which we how to enact or how to make these actions carried out, or how to represent those on stage. That is, we get the idea from the manner of imitation, or it is stage mechanism mostly. And we see most important structure of the incident, it is plot is taken to be the soul of the tragic tragedy, and it is an imitation not of men but of men in action, and of life, that is life consists in action. It is not just about some narration of something, but in action itself it is represented, then it becomes it adds to the quality of tragic narrative. Now, character again determines men's qualities. It is additional information about these parts also he gives in this section itself. Character, we know how it determines men's qualities, but it is by their actions that they are happy or the reverse. We know some characters are really virtuous, good, but by their action, we later come to know. See, sometimes we even a very good character might choose a very the options or choices he or she makes, because of that they may have a lot of problems. So that is about their action, and that is about their character. That's what he tells with the man's qualities, but that action with the respect to the actions, that they are happy or the reverse. And dramatic action, it's not see is not with a view to the representation of character. That character is secondary, and it is subsidiary to the actions. That's what we told, it is to be represented, and the actions play much greater role. And hence the incidents and plot are the end of a tragedy. End means that aim of a tragedy is to give much importance to the plot and the incidents, the actions, how to make maximum actions carried out, or to make that action itself actions it, the action that itself as the better part of it. And the most powerful elements of emotional interest in tragedy, he just mentions here, but we will get another part devoted for the explanation for this to that I'm going to refer, that is peripetia and anagnorisis, the most powerful elements that can bring a different color taste for the tragic evolution, the plot. That is, peripetia is about the reversal of the situation. That means you have a plot going on in that way, all of a sudden you get a high reversal of the situation, and then is about the anagnorisis. These two features can bring add element of surprise to the tragic enacting or tragic plot, tragic actions on stage. That is, anagnorisis about the recognition. All of a sudden, you recognize one thing to be something entirely different from what you have been taking for granted. Not just you or me, but about the characters. They recognize something, they identify something to be entirely different from what we mean, what they have meant. And obviously with their recognition and surprise, the audience also gets surprised. That's all. And now this is just about plot is that soul of tragedy. Character reveals more moral purpose. Thought is about the faculty of saying what is possible and pertinent in given circumstances. Again, we get a kind of briefing of all the major features or the elementary parts. That's all what happens. That's how he concludes that entire session. And so about diction, it's about expression of the meanings in words, and its essence is the same both in verse and prose. That is, diction means words, obviously. And verse and prose, verse, verse and prose, that words can be combined and made into the proper dialogues or whatever discourse of discussion may be. And song is melody chief place, that has chief place among embellishment. With the songs we can embellish the language structure of a play. And last but not least, the spectacle or scenery has an emotional attraction of its song, but of all the parts it is the least artistic and connected least with the art of poetry. But this has nothing to do with the art of poetry, or art of artistic bent. That is, it is just about mechanism, stage mechanism. It doesn't have much to do with the art of poetry in general. And spectacular effect depends more on the art of the stage mechanism. That is his or her uh, caliber. That depends upon. It doesn't have much to do with the writer's caliber, and that than that on the part of the poet. And even apart from representation, the power of tragedy may be felt in reading as well. That is the other idea. Of course, we talk about tragedy or any dramatic representation to be something meant for uh, staging rather than reading. But even then, this is as a fact that remains as a fact that the effect can be felt apart from staging, that can be felt in reading as well. So that is about that's all about that part called that mainly talks about tragedy, gives the basic ideas about tragedy as per Aristotle's conceptualization. So thank you.